Your monthly subscription box from postflybox.com includes all the materials needed to tie a dozen flies, along with some extra goodies. The Bunny Midge is an exceptionally versatile trout fly that resembles a dead or spent insect floating on the water's surface, a food item trout can't resist. Begin by picking up one of the size 14 nymph hooks and getting it firmly secured in the jaws of your tying vise. Then, load a bobbin with the spool of black uni-thread. Get the thread started on the hook shank behind the eye, and after taking a few wraps rearward, snip off the excess tag. Continue taking thread wraps rearward to just shy of the midpoint of the hook shank. Get hold of one end of the white zealand and snip off about an inch. Separate the clump lengthwise into 2 equal halves and set one half aside for the wing. Split the other half in half again and hold on to one of those halves to form the tail of the fly. Place one end on top of the hook shank and snip it off square. Give your bobbin a counterclockwise spin so the first wrap of tying thread will jump slightly rearward and catch the butt ends of the zealand. While pulling up and toward you with the zealand, take thread wraps to bind it to the top of the hook shank until your thread hangs at about the hook barb. Trim the zealand off to form a tail approximately a hook shank in length. Make open spiral wraps with your tying thread to reposition it at the butt ends of the zealand. Snip a 5-inch length of the brown thread free and get hold of it by one end. Lay that end against the near side of the hook and take 2 or 3 thread wraps to loosely secure it, then pull the thread to length under the wraps. Use your tying thread to anchor the brown thread to the hook shank. As you work rearward, let your tying thread push the brown thread to the far side of the hook. Return your tying thread forward once again to the butt ends of the zealand. Snip one of the lengths of gray floss in half. Lay one of the halves ends against the near side of the hook, and after anchoring it with a few thread wraps, pull it to length. Continue taking thread wraps to bind the floss to the hook shank all the way back to the base of the tail. Then, return your tying thread forward to where you started. Begin taking touching to slightly overlapping wraps up the hook shank with the floss to create the body of the fly. If you can, increase the overlap as you work your way forward, which will in turn add a slight taper to the body of the fly. When you reach your tying thread, use it to anchor the floss, then snip the excess off close. Start making evenly spaced open spiral wraps with the brown thread over top of the floss body to rib and segment the fly. Here too, use your tying thread to anchor the brown thread and snip the excess off close. Get hold of the larger of the 2 remaining zealand segments and take cross wraps to anchor its midpoint to the top of the hook shank at the front end of the fly's body. The idea is to mount the wing on top of the hook shank and perpendicular to it. Once it's well secured and you're happy with its orientation, take a full wrap around just the hook shank to save your work. Sweep the wings up and back and trim them off even with the back edge of the hook bend. If there are any truly wayward fibers, go ahead and trim them off. The fly should now look something like this. Pick up the packet of gray dubbing and pull out just a small amount. Use the dubbing to create a thin 1.5-inch long noodle on your tying thread. Start taking cross wraps with the noodle around and over top of the wings. This will both build up a little thorax on the fly and help to keep the wings secure and correctly oriented. Ideally, you should end with bare tying thread at the back edge of the hook eye. Pick up your whip finish tool, sweep the wings back out of the way, and complete a 5 or 6 turn whip finish before seating the knot well and snipping your tying thread free. And that's the Bunny Midge. If you see naturals on the water's surface, either dead or alive, the Bunny Midge will very likely be effective.